My mom took scissors to the dresses I bought with my babysitting money and screamed, "This is not who you are." When I tried to stand up for myself, she lunged at me and started hacking through the fabric while humming a lullaby. I whispered into the 911 receiver, "She has scissors, and she won't stop." That was 18 months ago. Yesterday, she mailed a birthday card addressed to Andrew and signed it, "Your real mother." I confronted my parents after I found out that they chose my gender for me against my will. At 5, I thought I knew I was a girl, but for some reason my family kept calling me Andrew when my name was Amelia. They threw out all my church dresses out and replaced it all with polo shirts and gym clothing. I thought that this was just my life now. I didn't know any better. Cut my hair short? Okay. My pronouns are he, him? Okay. Decorate my room with NBA players? Sure. I love Kobe. All I wanted was my parents to love me, so I never questioned a thing. So when I wanted to play with Barbie dolls and have sleepovers with my female friends, I didn't care. I figured eventually those worldly desires could be extracted from my body, and eventually my dream could come true, to be the son my parents always wanted. So even when I started elementary school, I used the boys' bathrooms. I even remember attempting to use the urinal. Naturally, this led to a few questions arising, but I'd always shut them down with authority and tell them this is just how things are, or at least as much authority as a 7-year-old can humanly possess, lol. Eventually, I think my teachers actually started believing I was a boy because the questions faltered, and somehow, I managed to join the boys' football team. I hit myself in secret whenever I heard any girlish giggle or tone come out of my mouth, because the more masculine I became, the more my parents loved me. I remember being in the peak of my boyhood, when literally anyone I interacted with told me I was the best son a parent could ask for. My parents practically treated me like a king. Every day I'd wake up to a home-cooked breakfast in bed, with homemade strawberry lemonade and a surprise toy that I'd circled in my catalog. It was the best feeling ever. Fast forward to when I turned 15 and got my first period. I genuinely thought I was dying, because no one had ever introduced me to the concept of female puberty before. I frantically ran into my mom's room to tell her what happened, expecting her to call an ambulance or something. Instead, her face turned ghost white, so I lunged at her for a hug. "Get away from me!" she screamed, before curling up into a ball and having a mental breakdown. That's when my dad barged into the room. "Honey, what the F is going on? Andrew just got his period." As soon as she told him, he grabbed my wrist, dragged me into another room, and locked the door. "Amelia, I need to tell you something." It was the first time my dad had ever called me Amelia, so I knew it was serious. "You may have noticed by now that you aren't exactly a boy." I nodded in relief. It was a truth that I had waited to be acknowledged for a very long time, and that's when all the pieces of the puzzle finally came together. Turns out I did have an older sibling, a brother, one that my parents were extremely excited to raise. But there were complications during his birth, and my mom had a miscarriage. My dad tried to convince her to take some time off work and let herself grieve, but she refused. And instead, she kept pushing my dad to put a baby inside her. So when they found out I was a girl, all the grief that my mom had suppressed resurfaced. And the only way my dad combated it was by raising me as Andrew instead of Amelia. That's when my dad broke down in tears. It was one of those extremely painful sobs, and I could tell he was just letting everything out. I froze, the truth hitting me like a punch to the chest. My entire life had been built on the ashes of a brother I never knew existed. Still, I was somewhat relieved that my facade was finally over, because I wanted nothing more than for my parents to love me for who I was, until my dad proceeded to take my silver lining and shot all over it. "Son, I need you to keep being Andrew for a while, just until you move out. Think of it as a favor to your mother." "A favor?" I snapped. "I've been living my entire effing life hating myself for who I was, all because of you." My dad's eyes were instantly filled with sorrow. I knew he was just trying to keep the peace and make everyone happy, but enough was enough. I barged out of the room, and that's when I was faced with my mom. "Andrew, are you okay? How are you feeling?" "I'm not doing this anymore, Mom. This isn't right. I'm sorry for your loss, but I can't keep suffering." She looked like she had just been slapped in the face. I immediately left the house and went on a little shopping spree with the money from my babysitting job. For the first time, I bought exactly what I wanted. Dresses, skirts, heels, and I looked damn good too. Unfortunately, my mother disagreed. I tried to be quiet when I got home, but still she heard me. She grabbed the nearest pair of kitchen scissors and started cutting through the dresses. "This is not who you are. I will not allow this." This time, I didn't even feel sad or angry, just scared. Luckily, my dad heard the commotion and immediately came rushing in. While he tried to calm her down, I literally dialed 911, not knowing what else to do. The 911 operator's voice crackled through my phone speaker, asking about the nature of the emergency. I whispered that my mother had scissors and was destroying property while screaming. The operator immediately asked if anyone was in danger and if there were weapons involved. I glanced at Mother still hacking away at the fabric, pieces of my new clothes floating down like snow around her feet. My voice came out barely audible as I confirmed there were scissors. Father managed to wrestle the scissors from Mother's grip, but in the struggle, the blade caught her hand. A thin line of red appeared across her palm, and drops of blood splattered onto the white sundress I'd just bought. Mother froze, staring at the blood on the dress. Her face crumpled, and she began making a horrible keening sound. The sirens arrived within minutes. 2 police officers entered first, hands on their holsters, taking in the scene. Fabric scraps everywhere. Mother on the floor clutching the ruined clothes. Father trying to wrap a dish towel around her bleeding hand. One officer approached me while the other went to my parents. Mother had gathered the destroyed clothes into her arms, cradling them against her chest. She rocked back and forth, humming what sounded like a lullaby. The EMTs arrived and began evaluating her mental state, speaking in calm, measured tones. She didn't respond to their questions, just kept rocking and humming to the bundle of fabric. The officer questioning me seemed confused as he looked at his paperwork. He kept glancing between me and his notes, asking me to confirm my name. When I told him I was Amelia, his brow furrowed. He showed me the screen of his device. All the records showed Andrew, male, age 15. I stood there in my remaining new clothes, trying to explain, but the words tangled in my throat. How could I make him understand when legally, Amelia didn't exist? Father told the officers it was just a family disagreement, that Mother had been under stress and needed rest. He downplayed everything, making it sound like a simple argument that got out of hand. The officers seemed inclined to believe him until a social worker arrived, Ms. Rodriguez, who introduced herself as being from Child Protective Services. Someone had called about a minor in distress. Ms. Rodriguez watched me carefully as the EMTs convinced Mother to come with them for evaluation. Mother went quietly, still clutching the ruined clothes. They mentioned something about a 72-hour psychiatric hold for observation after she'd made comments about harming herself with the scissors. The house felt eerily quiet after everyone left. Father and I rode home from the hospital in silence. The dashboard clock showed 2:47 a.m. We'd been at the hospital for hours while they processed Mother's admission. Finally, as we pulled into our driveway, Father spoke without looking at me. His words hit like ice water, asking why I couldn't have waited 3 more years until I turned 18. I went to my room but couldn't sleep. Something made me go to my parents' bedroom. In their closet, behind Father's suits, I found a box I'd never seen before. Inside were ultrasound images, tiny blue baby clothes with tags still on, and a death certificate. Andrew Jr., Zrania stillborn. The date was exactly 1 year before I was born. My hands shook as I dug deeper. Every document about me in that box said Andrew. Birth certificate, social security card, school enrollment forms, all marked male. Every photo showed me in boy clothes, my hair short, standing in traditionally masculine poses. Legally, officially, Amelia Michelle didn't exist. I was Andrew Michael everywhere that mattered. Father never came inside that night. Through my window, I watched him sleep in the car, his head tilted back against the headrest. I sat alone in my room, surrounded by the ghost of the brother I'd been forced to become, understanding finally why Mother had cradled those destroyed dresses like a baby. In her mind, she wasn't destroying my clothes, she was protecting her son. Morning came too soon. Father made breakfast as if nothing had happened, scrambling eggs and frying bacon. He set a plate in front of me and sat down with his coffee. His voice was carefully neutral as he told me Mother would be home soon, and we'd work everything out as a family. The school called while we were eating. The automated message asked about Andrew's absence from classes yesterday. I realized with a sinking feeling that I couldn't explain to anyone why I needed feminine hygiene products. The school nurse was a woman, but my listed gender would raise questions. The health teacher, Mr. Frederick, was someone I couldn't face with this problem. I changed back into my boy clothes before returning to school. The polo shirt felt like a straitjacket. Jessica noticed immediately that something was wrong. There's something deeply unsettling about how the parents kept this whole charade going for 15 years without anyone catching on. I'm curious how they managed all the doctor visits and school forms without a single person questioning why their son had female anatomy. That takes some serious dedication to deception. She kept trying to catch my eye during class, but I couldn't meet her gaze. How could I explain that my entire life was a lie? Coach pulled me aside after school, his thick hand on my shoulder. He reminded me about the college scouts coming next week, warned me not to screw up my chances. The full-ride scholarship opportunities wouldn't last forever. I nodded mutely, feeling the pad in my underwear shift uncomfortably. During practice, the cramping intensified. I pushed through the drills, but during a particularly hard tackle, I felt the warm spread of blood soaking through. I stayed down, claiming I'd hurt my knee. The coach sent me to the bench with ice. One of my teammates, Frederick, glanced at the bench where I'd been sitting, then at me, but said nothing. His silence felt louder than words. Father picked Mother up from the hospital that evening. She walked through the door like a zombie, her movements slow and disconnected. The medication made her eyes glassy and unfocused. She smiled at me, reaching out to touch my face, calling me her sweet boy. The words made my skin crawl. The family therapy appointment was scheduled for the next day. Dr. Brennan's office smelled like vanilla candles and leather furniture. He kept addressing me as Andrew throughout the session, even when I tried to correct him. Father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Mother's reaction was explosive. She shrieked at the therapist not to encourage my delusions. The word delusions echoed in my head long after she said it. Dr. Brennan suggested what he called a compromise. I could explore my identity elsewhere, but should remain Andrew at home to keep the peace. The suggestion made me feel split in two. Which person was I supposed to be, and when? That evening, Mother found my hidden makeup in my backpack. I'd bought it with the clothes, but managed to save it from her scissors. She dumped it all in the toilet. Lipstick, eyeshadow, mascara, flushing each item one by one. I watched my attempts at femininity swirl down the drain. Later, when Mother was asleep, Father slipped me some folded bills. His hands shook as he pressed them into mine, whispering that it was for emergencies. He apologized, said Mother was sick, that this was temporary. The money felt like guilt made tangible. I overheard Mother on the phone the next day, telling relatives I had a mental illness. She used words like confusion and phase and influenced by social media. She painted a picture of a troubled teen who wanted to be a girl, needed help getting back on track. The doorbell rang that weekend. My grandparents stood on the porch with suitcases and stern expressions. Grandfather carried photo albums under his arm. They'd driven 6 hours for what they called an intervention. Mother had called them, told them about my problem. They spread the photo albums across the coffee table like evidence in a trial. Page after page showed Andrew's wonderful boyhood, baseball games, fishing trips, scout meetings. Every photo had been carefully curated to show a happy, normal boy. They pointed to each one, reminding me of moments I'd supposedly cherished. Grandfather's voice boomed as he demanded I admit I was really Andrew, that this was all some terrible misunderstanding. The intervention stretched into hours of relentless pressure. My aunt pulled out printed articles about rapid onset gender dysphoria and waved them around like scientific proof. She explained how social media corrupted vulnerable teens, making them believe they were transgender. I sat frozen while relatives took turns explaining why I needed to accept being Andrew. Mother produced more evidence, report cards praising Andrew's athletic achievements, certificates from football camps, photos of me grinning in my uniform. She arranged them chronologically, narrating each memory with theatrical emotion. Her voice cracked when she described watching her son score touchdowns, how proud she'd been of his masculine strength. I finally broke down sobbing, admitting through tears that I'd tried desperately to be Andrew for them. The confession tumbled out, years of hitting myself whenever feminine mannerisms slipped through, forcing my voice deeper, studying how boys walked and mimicking their movements. I revealed the self-inflicted bruises hidden under my clothes, punishment for every failure to be masculine enough. Grandfather stood up abruptly, declaring this was spiritual warfare. He commanded everyone to form a prayer circle around me. His booming pastor voice filled the room as he attempted an impromptu exorcism, calling on God to cast out the feminine spirits possessing his grandson. My body shook uncontrollably as he pressed his palm against my forehead, praying louder when I tried to pull away. Father finally intervened when I started hyperventilating. He pushed through the circle and helped me to the bathroom, where I vomited from panic. Through the door, I heard shouting. Grandfather calling Father an enabler, my aunt accusing him of child abuse for encouraging this delusion. Car doors slammed as they left, but not before promising they'd return to save Andrew from himself. Monday morning, morning brought unexpected relief when Mrs. Chen, the school counselor, noticed my distress during lunch. She invited me to her office, offering tissues and a safe space to talk. Something about her gentle persistence broke through my defenses. I found myself telling her everything: the forced identity, the years of pretending, mother's breakdown. Mrs. Chen's expression grew increasingly concerned as I spoke. She explained she was a mandated reporter, legally required to file a report with Child Protective Services. I begged her not to, terrified of the consequences. She held my hands gently, explaining this was about protecting me, ensuring my safety. The report would be filed regardless of my protests. Mother intercepted the CPS letter 3 days later. She stormed into my room, waving the paper like a weapon, her face contorted with rage as she accused me of trying to destroy our family. She dragged me to the kitchen phone, standing over me while I called CPS. Her nails dug into my shoulder as she dictated what to say, explaining it was all a misunderstanding, that I'd been confused and emotional. The CPS worker sounded skeptical but noted my retraction. Mother smiled coldly when I hung up, warning that any further attempts to spread lies would have severe consequences. She implemented new rules: no closed doors, no private phone calls, no unsupervised internet access. My world shrank to school and home, with Mother monitoring every interaction. Jessica found me crying in the bathroom during PE class. I couldn't hold back anymore and told her everything. Her eyes widened with understanding rather than judgment. She revealed her older sister was transgender, had transitioned in college. Jessica knew the signs, recognized my pain. She promised to help however she could. Mother discovered our friendship when she read my text messages. She called Jessica's parents, screaming about their daughter corrupting her son. When that didn't work, she banned all contact. She drove me to and from school, waited in the parking lot during practice, monitored hallways between classes. Jessica tried passing notes through other students, but Mother intercepted those too. My body betrayed me as puberty progressed. Despite baggy clothes, my chest developed. Mother noticed during one of her mandatory weekly inspections. I found her late at night researching hormone blockers on sketchy international websites. The browser history showed searches for stop female puberty, testosterone for teens, and reverse BRAST growth. The realization that she might force medical intervention terrified me. Father found me looking at the computer history. He sat heavily in his desk chair, finally admitting he'd wanted to tell me the truth years ago. Mother had threatened Sewers lied if he revealed I wasn't really Andrew. She'd written notes, shown him med bottles, described in detail how she'd end her life if he betrayed their son's memory. He'd been trapped between protecting me and keeping Mother alive. Mother created a new schedule to reinforce masculinity. Weekly barber appointments to maintain the perfect boy's haircut. Daily voice coaching sessions where she made me repeat phrases in a deeper tone. Mandatory weight training in the garage. She bought books about raising boys and implemented every stereotypical masculine activity, teaching me to spit, forcing me to watch football, banning any media with female protagonists. I started secretly recording her rants on an old phone Jessica had slipped me. Mother's unhinged monologues about protecting Andrew, saving her son, preventing the corruption of his pure masculine soul. She'd pace my room at night, talking to herself about how Andrew was still in there, how she just needed to try harder to bring him back. The recordings captured her increasing instability. Jessica's parents, the Nguyens, invited me for dinner under the pretense of a study group. Mother reluctantly agreed after Mr. Nguyen called personally, assuring her it was for an important group project. The moment I arrived, Mrs. Nguyens' knowing look told me Jessica had explained everything. They'd orchestrated this meeting to check on my welfare. Mrs. Nguyen was a family lawyer who specialized in custody cases. Over dinner, she carefully explained my legal rights. At 15, I had some say in custody arrangements. She offered to help file paperwork to change my legal documents, explained the process for emancipation if necessary. For the first time, I felt hope that escape was possible. Mother tracked my phone's location and realized I'd been there too long for just studying. She burst through the Nguyen's front door, screaming about kidnapping and brainwashing. Mr. Nguyen calmly started recording on his phone. Mother lunged at him, trying to grab the device. Why does the therapist keep calling them Andrew even after being corrected? Something's off about Dr. Brennan, suggesting they split their identity between home and elsewhere. That seems like it would make things worse, not better. In the struggle, she struck him across the face. Mrs. Nguyen immediately called 911. The police arrested Mother for assault. As they led her away in handcuffs, she screamed that the Nguyens were part of a transgender cult trying to steal her son. I spent the night at the police station giving statements. Father arrived looking defeated, going through the motions of bail arrangements while avoiding my eyes. With Mother in jail overnight, Father finally broke completely. He led me to the spare bedroom I'd never been allowed to enter. Inside was a perfectly preserved nursery, blue walls, sports-themed decorations, a crib with Andrew Jr.'s name painted above it. 15 years later, everything remained exactly as they'd prepared for their son. Father revealed Mother visited the cemetery monthly, sitting at Andrew Jr.'s grave for hours. She'd bring report cards, football trophies, photos from school events. She'd tell her dead son about Andrew's achievements, updating him on his brother's life, the brother who was actually his sister, forced to live as his replacement. The depth of deception became clear as Father opened his office safe. Inside were my original documents: birth certificate reading Amelia Michelle, hospital records confirming female birth. He explained how they'd paid off records clerks, convinced doctors to falsify documents. Every official paper had been systematically changed to support the lie that I was Andrew Michael. Father helped me photograph every document before Mother's release, evidence of the conspiracy to erase Amelia and create Andrew, bank accounts opened under false pretenses, school enrollment with forged records, years of medical fraud to avoid revealing my biological sex. The scope was staggering. Mother returned home to find the nursery dismantled. Father had donated everything while she was gone. She stood in the empty room, then began destroying what remained. She grabbed the baby monitor from a box and swung it at my head. Father caught her wrist, restraining her as she collapsed into hysterical sobbing. The psychiatric evaluation was immediate this time. The assault charge combined with her breakdown led to involuntary commitment. The psychiatrist diagnosed complicated grief disorder with psychotic features. Mother believed I was an imposter who had murdered Andrew and taken his place. She required long-term hospitalization. Father filed for temporary full custody and agreed I could begin transitioning to living as myself. The first day returning to school as Amelia was terrifying. I wore a simple skirt and blouse, my hair clipped back with a barrette Jessica had given me. Some students parents were supportive, but others were cruel. Andrew in a dress became the favorite taunt. The football team felt betrayed. Half refused to speak to me, while others made their displeasure physical. Shoulder checks in hallways, accidental trips, equipment mysteriously damaged. Coach cornered me after school, explaining that my scholarship opportunities would disappear if I continued this nonsense. He'd invested too much in Andrew to accept Amelia. Jessica stood by me through every harassment. We faced lunchroom mockery together, walked between classes as a unit. Her fierce protection meant everything, but it also made her a target. Someone spray-painted slurs on her locker. Her tires were slashed. Still, she never wavered. Mother manipulated the hospital psychiatrists, presenting as stable and remorseful. She earned day passes for therapeutic outings. Instead of healing activities, she used them to stalk me at school. I'd find Andrew's old clothes stuffed in my locker. Football jerseys appeared on my desk. Once, she stood across the street from school, just watching. Father filed for a restraining order, but Mother violated it immediately. She was caught trying to enter the school with a bag full of boys' clothes and hair clippers. The security footage showed her testing doors, looking for unlocked entries. She was re-hospitalized with increased security measures. Father struggled with pronouns, accidentally outing me repeatedly. During a parent-teacher conference, he referred to me as he throughout the meeting. The story spread through school within hours. At football practice pickup, he loudly asked about Andrew in front of the entire team. Each slip felt like a betrayal, even when unintentional. The team divided into factions. A few players quietly supported me, nodding in hallways or offering small smiles, but the vocal majority was hostile. My locker became a target for increasingly vicious vandalism. Slurs gave way to death threats. The worst day, I opened it to find a dead rat with a note. Die freak. I brought the evidence to the principal, who refused to investigate. He lectured me about creating disruption and choosing to make waves. He suggested I consider online school if I couldn't handle the consequences of my choices. The administration's indifference was almost worse than peer cruelty. Local news picked up the story after someone leaked it to reporters. The headline read, "Boy forced to live as girl claims opposite." The article twisted facts, portraying my parents as victims of a confused child. Mother's family fed false information to journalists, painting me as mentally ill and attention-seeking. Our house became a circus of media vans and shouting reporters. Protesters appeared outside our home with signs reading, "Let Andrew be a boy" and "Stop child abuse." They believed they were protecting a boy forced into dresses by abusive parents. The irony was crushing. They were supporting the actual abuse while thinking they opposed it. Some threw rocks at our windows. Others left threatening messages. Father lost his job after his employer received hundreds of calls about harboring a child abuser. His boss apologetically explained that the controversy was affecting business. Clients were pulling contracts. Staff were being harassed. He had no choice but to let Father go. The termination letter cited, bringing negative attention to the company. The stress and isolation became unbearable. I found Mother's hidden stash of pills in the bathroom cabinet. Anxiety medication, sleeping pills, pain relievers. The bottle felt heavy in my hand as I counted out what seemed like enough. Jessica found me before I could swallow them, wrestling the pills away while crying. The hospital's psychiatric ward was a nightmare. Staff insisted on calling me Andrew despite correction. My wristband read M for male. They placed me in the boys' wing. Other patients questioned why a girl was in their space, but nurses insisted I was confused about my identity. The very place meant to help reinforce the trauma. Mrs. Nguyen filed an emergency petition for medical rights, arguing the hospital was violating my civil rights. The judge was sympathetic but cautious, ordering a full evaluation. Mother's family testified that I was mentally ill, just as Mother had always said. They brought childhood photos, selective memories, anything to prove Andrew was real, and Amelia was the delusion. Father faced an impossible choice. Supporting me meant losing everything. His family, his home, his community. Maintaining the status quo meant continuing the abuse. In court, he finally chose me. He filed for divorce and testified about the years of deception. His voice broke as he admitted forcing his daughter to live as his dead son. Mother escaped during a transfer between facilities. Her family had coordinated with sympathetic staff, creating a distraction while she slipped away. Security footage showed her getting into her sister's car. An Amber Alert was issued when she was spotted near my school. Police placed me in protective custody while they searched. They found Mother at Andrew Jr. his grave, building a shrine with my boy clothes. She'd arranged football jerseys, cleats, and photos around the headstone. When police approached, she told them Amelia had called her real son, that she was trying to resurrect him. She believed if she prayed hard enough, Andrew would return and the imposter would disappear. The psychiatric evaluation deemed Mother incompetent to stand trial. Her break from reality was complete. She was institutionalized indefinitely, locked in a world where Andrew was alive and Amelia was a demon. The doctors explained she might never accept the truth, that her grief had created a delusion so powerful it destroyed her daughter's life. The custody hearing was brutal, but decisive. I testified about years of abuse, showing photos of bruises from self-harm, playing recordings of Mother's rants. The judge granted Father full custody and terminated Mother's parental rights, but Mother's family immediately filed for grandparent rights, claiming Father was unfit and I needed proper guidance. The school board meeting about bathroom access became national news. Parents packed the auditorium, shouting about protecting children. They didn't mean protecting me. The vote was close but negative. I would continue using staff facilities, marking me as different, other, dangerous. Death threats arrived daily, some graphic enough to warrant police investigation. An anonymous donor, later revealed to be Mrs. Chen, paid for Father and me to relocate. Moving day brought a final confrontation. Mother's family surrounded the moving truck, chanting, "Give us back Andrew." They held signs with his photos, demanding the return of their grandson-nephew. Police had to escort us out of town. The police lights faded into the distance as we drove through unfamiliar streets. Father gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white, checking the rearview mirror every few seconds. I watched my hometown disappear forever through the back window, realizing I'd never have normal childhood memories from that place. The new apartment smelled like fresh paint and cleaning products. Father carried boxes while I explored the empty rooms, trying to imagine a life where nobody knew Andrew. Something feels off about how quickly Mother went from manipulating doctors to building shrines at graveyards. That's quite a jump in behavior patterns that the psychiatrists somehow missed during their evaluations. The walls were blank canvases waiting for Amelia's story, but the weight of the past pressed down on my shoulders. School registration required creativity. Father explained to the administrator about safety concerns, showing court documents. She nodded sympathetically, agreeing to list me as as Amelia in their system despite my legal documents still reading Andrew. Small victories felt monumental. The first day at the new school, I wore jeans and a feminine top, a compromise between who I was and what felt safe. Students glanced curiously but didn't stare. Nobody whispered about Andrew in a dress. I was just the new girl, mysterious but not scandalous. Father's drinking started gradually. A beer after work became 3. 3 became a 6-pack. I'd find him passed out on the couch, mumbling apologies to Andrew Jr. in his sleep. Empty bottles accumulated like monuments to his guilt. Jessica visited during spring break, taking the bus for 6 hours. Seeing her at the door made me feel human again. We spent the afternoon walking through the park, her presence reminding me that someone knew my whole truth and still chose to be there. That evening, Jessica and I were watching a movie when Father stumbled in, hammered and rambling. He stared at us, then started crying about how Andrew Jr. would have been such a good athlete, such a strong boy. Jessica held my hand as I guided Father to bed, his words cutting deeper than any bully's taunts. 2 weeks later, Mother's family found us. The private investigator they'd hired was thorough. I came home from school to find "We know what you are" spray painted across our garage door in red letters. The security camera Father installed caught Mother's brother driving away. Father filed police reports, but the harassment continued. Dead flowers on our doorstep. Andrew's old football jersey hung on our mailbox. Photos of Andrew Jr.'s grave slipped under the door. Each reminder twisted the knife of Mother's obsession. The legal name change hearing finally arrived. I sat in the courthouse wearing my best dress, hands folded in my lap. The judge reviewed the paperwork, asking routine questions. Father signed each document with shaking hands, tears rolling down his cheeks as Amelia Michelle became legally real. That night, a letter arrived from Mother's institution. Inside was a crayon drawing. 3 stick figures labeled Mommy, Daddy, and Andrew. The boy figure was colored in bright blue, smiling under a yellow sun. No girl existed in Mother's world. Father's breakdown came suddenly. I found him in the bathroom with a bottle of pills, a rambling note on the counter about failing both his children. I knocked the bottle from his hand, pills scattering across the tile floor. We sat there together, both sobbing, finally bonding over our shared trauma. The therapist Father found specialized in complicated grief. Dr. Sarah Kim's office felt different from Dr. Brennan's, warmer, safer. She worked with both of us, untangling the web of loss, guilt, and identity that had destroyed our family. News came during a session. Mother's condition had deteriorated. She'd stopped eating, convinced that demons were trying to poison her to prevent Andrew's resurrection. The institution increased her medication, but she remained trapped in her delusion. Grandfather filed for custody, claiming Father was an unfit alcoholic enabling mental illness. The trial became a spectacle. Old teammates testified about Andrew's happiness, how he'd been a natural athlete, a born leader. They couldn't reconcile that boy with a girl sitting in the courtroom. Jessica flew in to testify. She described finding me crying in bathrooms, the self-harm, the sewer slide attempt. She explained how I'd tried desperately to be Andrew but couldn't erase Amelia. Her testimony shifted the tide, showing the human cost of forced identity. The judge's ruling was measured. Grandparents' petition denied, but regular welfare checks ordered. Mother's family left the courthouse vowing to never stop fighting, to save Andrew from the imposter who'd stolen his life. Senior year began with cautious optimism. I made friends who only knew Amelia. Eleanor from art class, Josephineson from theater. They accepted me without question, though I still flinched whenever someone accidentally called me Andrew. College applications required essays about overcoming adversity. I wrote about identity, family, and the cost of living authentically. The words flowed like blood from an old wound, honest and raw. The acceptance letter came with a full scholarship. Father relapsed on my 18th birthday. I found him at Andrew Jr.'s grave, hammered and talking to the headstone about what a good man Andrew would have been. The cemetery groundskeeper called me, having seen this scene before. I considered cutting contact after graduation. The thought of leaving Father felt like abandonment, but staying meant drowning in his unresolved grief. Dr. Kim helped me understand that saving myself wasn't betrayal. The call came during finals week. Mother had suffered a heart attack during an episode where she believed Andrew was trapped inside the walls. She'd been clawing at the paint, screaming about saving her son when her heart gave out. The funeral divided the family completely. I wore a black dress, standing between Father and Jessica. Mother's relatives sat across the aisle, refusing to acknowledge me. They spoke only of Andrew's mother, the woman who'd fought to save her son from corruption. The burial was worse. Grandfather gave a eulogy about Mother's devotion to Andrew, how she'd never given up on her son. He stared directly at me while speaking, his message clear. I was the imposter who'd culled her with my selfishness. After the service, people from my hometown approached Father. They blamed me for Mother's death, said if I'd just stayed Andrew, she'd still be alive. The weight of their judgment felt crushing, even though I knew the truth. Father finally broke the cycle that night. Sitting in our apartment, surrounded by sympathy cards addressed to Andrew's family, he looked at me clearly for the first time. He admitted he'd been mourning a son who never existed while slowly culling his living daughter. The revelation wasn't magical healing, it was the beginning of real work. Father started attending his own therapy, confronting his role in the deception. He learned to see me as Amelia, not Andrew's replacement or Andrew's destroyer. Graduation day arrived with mixed emotions. I walked across the stage as Amelia Michelle, my chosen name announced to applause. Father sat in the audience, sober for 3 months, finally seeing his daughter instead of his son's ghost. Jessica and I moved in together near my college campus. Our small apartment became a sanctuary where I could fully be myself. We painted the walls purple, hung photos of our real memories, created a space where Andrew had never existed. Mother's family continued sending letters addressed to Andrew, birthday cards, holiday wishes, updates about cousins and family events. Each envelope was a reminder that some people would choose comfortable lies over difficult truths. I started therapy training, drawn to helping others navigate identity and trauma. The program was intensive, requiring me to confront my own experiences. Each client's story echoed pieces of my own journey. Years passed. I built a life as Amelia. Career, relationships, chosen family. The scars remained but no longer defined me. I learned that healing wasn't erasing the past, but integrating it into who I'd become. Father and I developed a careful relationship. Holiday visits, weekly phone calls, shared therapy sessions twice a year. He never fully released his grief for Andrew Jr., but he learned to separate that loss from my existence. The work was meaningful but difficult. Clients struggling with identity, family rejection, forced roles. I understood their pain intimately, could offer hope from the other side. Living authentically was the only way to honor both the dead dead and the living. 10 years after that first confrontation, I stood at father's funeral. Cancer had taken him quickly. I spoke about forgiveness, breaking cycles, the courage to see truth even when it hurt. Mother's family sat in the back, still sending letters to Andrew. Unable to accept the son they loved never existed, only the daughter they refused to see. That's been quite the story to explore together. Go check out my other videos on the channel for more content like this.